evening. My name is Stacy Pitts, and on behalf of the Old Bridge PTA President's Council, I would like to welcome you to Candidates Night. We will begin with a brief statement from each of our candidates in the order that they appear on your ballot. There are 12 candidates running for 3 seats, each for a 3-year term, and there is 1 candidate running for a 1-year term. We will begin with number 1 on your ballot, which is Salvatore Giordano.
Good evening. My name is Salvatore Giordano, and I'm running for re-election to the Old Bridge Board of Education. When I began my first term in 2020, I was focused on managing the budget and trying to have copies of college guide sheets given to high school students so that they could graduate earlier. Like many of us in the country and the state and the town, after only a few months into my term, the schools were closed and the majority of time was spent debating the related issues and circumstances that followed. I became the early advocate for students and parents to get back to normal school conditions since they were experiencing a reduced quality of education. Board members should stand up for their constituents when it matters the most, and I will continue to do that. One of the things I always ensured as a board member is my response to resident emails and always answering all parts of the question and concerns. As we begin our first normal school year with me as your board member, I would like to continue to focus on the real issues facing our school district. Overseeing the budget is one of the most important parts of being a board member because with the continued reduced state aid in our district, we have to focus on real educational expenses instead of capital projects that can be postponed or rejected outright. High school students need to be more prepared for the workforce and/or college. I have the experience of being a recent former student of Old Bridge High School, and I want to continue to help students move on to the next phase of their lives. We should be helping to reduce one of the largest expenses a person can make, college tuition, with a program that will help students gain as many college credits as possible before they graduate high school. Even though those are only 2 of my main goals of being a board member, the residents of Old Bridge know very well that anything can be brought up to my attention, and I will do my best to address them. And with your help, I can continue being your representative for the school district. Make sure you vote for me, Salvatore Giordano, for the Old Bridge Board of Education by November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Our next candidate is candidate number 2, Jennifer D'Antuono.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer D'Antuono. I am a mother of 2 girls, one in elementary school and one in the middle school. I am a resident of Old Bridge. I grew up here going to Voorhees, Salk, and then was the first freshman class of Old Bridge High School. I decided to run for the Board of Education because through my experience as the PTA president at Memorial and being involved in the President's Council, I've enjoyed being involved in learning about the different schools in the district. I've also decided to join up to the state level of the PTA so that I could learn of what was needed in our schools across the state and use the different resources that are available to us. I decided to run for the Board of Education because I wanted to see a change in what was going on in the town. I saw people that were using our children as a platform to jump off of, and I wanted our children to be the main focus. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next candidate, candidate number 3, is Marjorie Jodry.
Good evening. My name is Marjorie L. Jodry, and I am running for Board of Education number 3 on the ballot. I've lived in Old Bridge for 26 years. I'm married and have a daughter who is the product of Old Bridge schools. She attended Grissom, Salk, and Old Bridge High School. As a former New York City Schools paraprofessional, general education and special education teacher, autism instructional coach, and an education administrator, I have 26 years of extensive experience working with students and their families. I began my education career as a paraprofessional and fell in love with working with students. I went back to school to continue my dream of being an educator and earned a BA in education and a master's degree in special education and an advanced certification in autism and severe disabilities. As a special education inclusion teacher, I realized that the strategies and supports I was using benefited all children with and without IEPs. Good teaching is good teaching. All students benefit from individualized supports and differentiated instruction. My path in education led me to become a BCBA, as well as the first citywide autism instructional coach, and finally, an education administrator. I supported teachers and paraprofessionals by working in classrooms and supporting students in all 5 boroughs. I worked closely with families and advocated for their children throughout my career. I created and presented professional development workshops for families, school, staff, and administrators. I've never forgotten where I come from, and it is important to me that everyone in Old Bridge has a voice, and those voices are equally considered, respected, and heard. I will work to ensure that all Old Bridge students of all abilities receive the education they need to reach their full potential. As families, educators, and as a community, we invest in things that matter to us, and nothing matters more than the academic and social-emotional well-being of our kids. I believe in Old Bridge schools, and I will work diligently to be the bridge for families, students,
Thank you, Ms.
educators.
Jodry. Thank you. Our next candidate, we have candidate number 4, who I'm going to apologize. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Could you pronounce your name for me?
Cornelius Akabueza.
Akabueza.
Yes.
Number 4, we have Cornelius Akabueza.
As I stated, my name is Cornelius Akabueza. I have lived in Old Bridge for 30 years. I have 4 children and a granddaughter. All my 4 children were born and raised in Old Bridge. 2 of them graduated. 2 adult children graduated from Old Bridge school system. 1 16-year-old kid is still in the Old Bridge school system. And my daughter, though went to private school but also benefited from Old Bridge school system, is a senior at West Point, the United States Military Academy. I'm running for the Board of Education to make sure that we have a safe learning environment for our students, and to make sure that we provide them everything that they need to be successful in their academic career or whatever career else they want to do after high school. Also, I believe that Old Bridge Board of Education needs to represent the diversity that we see in our community, Old Bridge. And that's why I'm running to make sure everything goes well.
Thank you, Mr. Akabueza. Our next candidate is candidate number 5, Lance Hilfman.
Yes, my name is Lance Hilfman. I've lived in Old Bridge for 33 years. My 2 children were grown up in Old Bridge, went through the system. I've lived in the area since 1968. I spent a lot of time in Old Bridge, and I see what Old Bridge education can and should be. I began teaching in 2005, and since then, I am now a special ed teacher. I've worked my way up. The reason I'm running is we need to maintain and increase the community's communication with us and us through the community. Our children are at stake here, and with the amount of building going on, we will have more children in the school system. We need to maintain what we have and actually increase it. My experience as in business before I became a teacher was to work as project planner. My experience as a teacher is to work with our greatest resource, our children. Having been in town for 33 years, having a wife who is a retired Old Bridge teacher who's still teaching here because she loves it so much, I've seen how we can increase and develop what we have as long as we maintain the communication. I am a communicator. I've been working with project planning. I've been working with education. I find myself being in a situation where I can help. I have the ability, I have the experience, but more importantly, I have the passion. And at 64 years old, I can go another 12 years in education. I see how it can benefit Old Bridge. The major reason people move to Old Bridge are convenience for where they work, but more importantly, the educational system. It's been good.
Thank you, Mr. Hilfman.
It can be great.
Our next candidate is candidate number 6. Raya
Sorry.
Arbiel.
Thank you. Before I introduce myself, I would like to thank the Old Bridge President's Council for spearheading this event and having me and the rest of the candidates here tonight. Above all, I want to thank you, each one of you being here and being engaged in the process of knowing and choosing your next Board of Education member. My name is Raya Arbiol, and I've been a resident of Old Bridge for over 2 decades now. I'm the daughter of a building superintendent and public school teacher. As the eldest, I helped my father raise my 6 younger siblings when my mother passed away at a very young age. Early on in my life, I learned how to be responsible and disciplined. I strive to keep my family together at all costs and seek what's best for them. Like many of you in this district, family is very important to me, and I genuinely would like to elevate the importance of family values in leading our Board of Education. I'm a lifelong student, a veteran, a small business owner, a volunteer, and a community organizer. I serve in the United States Navy as a hospital corpsman and earned my MBA and finishing my PhD in management currently. I have over a decade of professional experience in leading and managing multi-million-dollar operations in various industries. I strongly believe that the future of our township depends on the ability of the school district to bring excellence with equity to all students. I am running on the platform of children first. No matter what the issues are, children should be the priority, and in all major decisions with a strong collaboration with the parents. I am eager to promote educational excellence, champion efficient operations and fiscal responsibility, and advocate diversity and inclusion. I am ready to take the school district to the next level of overall excellence. Again, my name is Raya Arbiol, number 6 in your ballot, and with your help and support, I would proudly serve this community as your next Board of Education member. Good evening, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbiel. Our next candidate is candidate number 7, Matthew DeFranco.
I also want to thank the President's Council for hosting this evening's events, allowing all the community a chance to hear directly from the candidates. As an introduction, again, I'm Matthew DeFranco. I'm a parent of 2 elementary-age students who attend Walter Schirra. My wife and I moved to Old Bridge almost 10 years ago. When choosing to move here, we focused on being closer to family and being in a town that had a strong school system, and we found that here in Old Bridge. Both my wife and I are very involved in our children's school, as we've both been class parents, and also participate in our school's PTA. My wife is also a member of the school's PTA board for over 3 years now. And we do this because we want to ensure that the children's academic and education, academically and socially achievements are met. Over the past 2 years, I've taken it upon myself to be more involved with the dealings of how the district is managed and the decision processes that help it function. Initially, I would be viewing meetings, being the Board of Ed agenda or regular meetings, and then once made public, I would be attending them in person. Where I saw fit, I spoke and questioned certain items. Additionally, I tried to attend and participate in all the various committee meetings held, as I feel these meetings are where you really see the work that goes into much of what's discussed and voted on at the board meetings. And it's important to see this to get an understanding of the work that needs to be done prior to things getting to the board itself. Professionally, I've been in the finance industry for 21 years in various positions within credit and risk management at a $100 billion financial institution. The perspective my professional career provides me is an ability to look holistically at situations and understand how to identify, evaluate, and assess risks pragmatically, and work in a team environment to collaborate with all stakeholders to determine the best course of action to address any of these risks. Additionally, my finance background will aid with the work needed to ensure our district is on a solid financial foundation, which is imperative with the continued state aid crisis that will continue to negatively impact our district.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Our next candidate is candidate number 8, Elena Francisco.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena Francisco, and I am number 8 on your ballot. First, I would like to thank all of you for having me here this evening. I'm grateful for the opportunity to look forward to letting you get to know me more. I've been an Old Bridge resident for over 30 years. I moved here when I was 8 years old, and I started 3rd grade at Schirra. I then went on to attend Salk, and I'm a proud graduate of Old Bridge High School. I received my teaching degree from the College of New Jersey. I taught for 10 years in Perth Amboy in 1st and 4th grades. I was a general education teacher in an inclusion classroom, teaching with a special education teacher each day. I was a mentor for new teachers and had many leadership roles working directly with administration. I also have experience writing and implementing curriculum. I have the utmost respect for the teaching profession. Unless you actually teach or are a building staff member, it's quite difficult to grasp what truly goes into educating our youth. I know firsthand just how hard our teachers work and will be able to be a voice for them simply because I have walked the walk. During my first few years teaching, I received my master's degree in educational administration and supervision from Rutgers University. I also worked diligently to become a national board certified teacher, an honor that only belongs to 310 teachers in the state of New Jersey. My husband and I have 2 daughters, one who attends Sandburg and one at Shira. I stopped teaching after my second daughter was born. I quickly became part of the Shira PTA and eventually the president to support the school community, as well as fulfill my passion for helping children. This past spring, I decided to run for the open position on the Board of Education and was appointed in June. Once again, I have been blessed with an opportunity to support my community and ensure the best education for our children. In running for the Board of Ed, I will focus on putting children first, encouraging parent involvement, increasing transparency, and striving for excellence and education for all students. My main goal will be keeping the children at the forefront of every decision that is presented to me. To this end, it is essential that parents have a strong voice in what they believe is best for their children. I look forward to connecting with more parents and community members. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. Our 9th candidate is Lynn Bergen. I apologize. Lynn Bergen, number 9.
Hi, my name's Lynn Barkhan. I'm a little nervous, sorry. My husband and I both grew up in Old Bridge. We lived here our entire lives. My children graduated from Old Bridge. I have 3 daughters. And as a mom, I love the Old Bridge school system. I was glad we stayed here because of it, and we put our 3 kids through it, and I loved it. I loved the teachers. I loved everything about it. And at that time, I mean, the curriculum, I loved everything about it, and they covered all the basics in the school. You know, math, language arts, science, history, and it was great. It's now, all of a sudden, it seems like I have a feeling like they're reaching beyond what's basic skills, and it really is concerning to me. And I just want to make sure that the purpose of the school education is just education and nothing more. I don't think they need to go further. I think that's what families need to do. And then basically, I just want to contribute to the school board and ensure like every child's needs are met. The school board members assist the community in ways that are crucial. In other words, the communication is good. There should be a lot more parent involvement in the curriculum. As a board member, I will ensure accessibility to the rest of the community because accountability for decisions and cooperation are vital for stable and safe schools. And I will work hard for students to receive the most desirable school education for every tax dollar spent. I believe the board member's most important obligation is to cooperate with the community to develop students' achievement in public schools, and it requires a reliable, driven, and compassionate member, which I consider myself to be. I believe that the constant need to improve and develop every aspect of our society is vital for continuous advancement. Our children are growing up to be the adults of tomorrow, and their development is parallel to our country's future, and I believe I'm suitable for running for the Old Bridge School Board and ensuring that America's future is bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bergen. Our 10th candidate is Salvatore DePrima.
Thank you, Stacy. Excuse me. My name is Salvatore DePrima. I am candidate number 10 on the ballot. My family and I have lived in Old Bridge for 28 years. I have been married for 36 years, and I have 2 grown children and 2 young grandchildren. I attended Kingsborough Community College in Brooklyn, hold an associate's degree, and I am a financial services branch operations manager. I have previously served 9 years on the Old Bridge Board of Education, serving as vice president twice, president once, and having attained certified board member status. I have been involved in my community since I moved here in 1994 as a coach, manager, secretary, and safety officer in the Lawrence Harbor Little League, a member, officer, 2-time yearbook advisor, and life member of the Leroy Gordon Cooper School PTA, a member and officer of the Carl Sandburg Middle School PTA, Old Bridge High School PTSA, and Middlesex County PTA. I ran and continue to assist in running the Lombardi Field concession stand for the past 20 years. I assisted in organizing the Shore Aid Telethon as a relief for Superstorm Sandy. I'm a third-degree Knight of Columbus, founding member of the Cliffwood Beach Neighborhood Association, and the Order of Sons and Daughters of Italy in America, the Keyport Lodge. As a former board member, I was part of the renaissance of our school district. During my tenure, we brought this school district forward from a good district to great district. Some of the accomplishments I am proud of are the implementation of full-day kindergarten, defeat of the charter school application, attaining District of Character and Blue Ribbon status, and keeping most programs and personnel intact amidst massive budget cuts. The recent pandemic forced us to take a step backward. Through the hard work and cooperation of every stakeholder, we're coming back, and I would love to be a part of that rebuilding once again, as I know I would be an asset having already been through it. There are many areas in our school district that need attention, such as current curriculum issues, inclusion and diversity, the constant loss of state funding, return to normalcy after a global pandemic, and last but certainly not least, the constant evolution of our special education programs.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Our 11th candidate is Richard Dunn.
Good evening. My name is Richard Dunn, and I'm seeking election to the Old Bridge Board of Education. As you may know, I served on the Board of Education for 11 years previously, and I've made a difference in this community because I'm a fighter for the children. I believe education empowers our children, and we need to focus on that. We're not here to focus on peripheral issues that affect our community politically. One thing that I have to say is when I was the president of this Board of Education, we were able to implement full-day kindergarten. Full-day kindergarten made a huge difference in where we are today. There are people out there who are on the board currently who believe that full-day kindergarten is not in the best interest of this district. And quite frankly, it's time to get people back on the board who made a difference, who made this district what it is today. I can say unequivocally that my leadership on the board brought us to a point where we can be very proud of this school district. I want to get back on the board and fight for our children because I believe education empowers our children. Without education, children are not going to be successful in life. As we know, state aid has destroyed this district. We lost a tremendous amount of state aid, and we need to be able to fix that, and there's different ways we can with constructing our budget to ensure that the money is there for our children to be successful. One thing that is very close to my heart is special education. My daughter was a benefactor of the special needs programs here in this great town, and it seems that we are starting to deviate and move away from making sure our programs have the money and resources to be successful. We need to put our children first. Politics needs to stay out of the Board of Education. These peripheral issues that are taking us away from the important things of education is the problem. I want to get back on the board and fight for our children, fight for what's right, and bring us back to the point where we can say that we are educating our children with the best possible education necessary. I'm a steward, and I'm going to fight for the children, and I'm here to do so. Maybe you don't know who I am.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our 12th candidate, Robert Davis, is not with us tonight. And our last candidate is candidate number 13, Devinder Singh, who is also not with us tonight, but did provide a statement to be read to those in attendance. So I will read that, and I will time myself to make sure that I don't go over. Good evening to all those in attendance in the room and those watching on YouTube. I am Devinder Singh, who moved to Old Bridge 25 years ago. All 3 of my children are graduates from the Old Bridge school system. Old Bridge has suffered through COVID-19, including the deaths of members of our community, the learning loss of our students, and the losses to our business community also. I appreciate the wonderful opportunities my family and I have had in this country and in Old Bridge. I am running for the 1-year seat on the Board of Education to give back to the Old Bridge community, and I, as a Board of Ed member, will focus on the loss of learning of our children. I humbly ask for your support on Election Day. And that was from candidate number 13, Devinder Singh. Before we move on to our question and answer, just so the candidates know, if you have feedback on your microphone, just turn yourself down a little bit, and that should take care of that issue. Everyone sounded pretty good. So the next portion of our evening is a question and answer segment. The questions that we're going to be asking tonight were received by President's Council via email, and some of them were written by people in attendance this evening. They are posed by residents and taxpayers that may have the same concerns as you. I urge you to listen to this program to enable you to make an informed decision on who you want to represent your children over the next 3 years. So we're going to go in ballot order to start with. So Mr. Giordano, you'll go first on the first question, and so on and so forth. There are questions for individual candidates as well as questions for all of the candidates. And I'll let you know before answering where we're at. So the first question, which Mr. Giordano, you're going to start with, will be, what are the 3 reasons an Old Bridge resident should vote for you?
Yeah, so I think I explained in my opening board speech, I've always answered the emails of the residents, and even if I didn't agree with them, or if I did agree with them, I always tried to keep the same tone with all of them. I never tried to hype them up if they were on my side, and I never put down on people that were against what I thought. The second reason is that I have a proven record of standing up for the people of Old Bridge. We saw since May 2020, I was trying to get the school back to normal and trying to get the kids back for 5 days a week, and other people in the town and the state as a whole were against that at the time. Actually came to my side, and they realized what was going on with the learning loss. And lastly, I actually point out things that we spend our money on and question whether they're really necessary. Like, for one thing, the renovation of Lombardi Field, that was a capital expense. It wasn't for an educational purpose, but it was something I brought up, and I didn't think it was necessary at the time. And I feel like having those conversations are very important, because we have a tendency to always, spend and try to be extravagant, but we have to focus on the necessities mostly, especially with the reduction of state aid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Ms. D'Antuono.
It's okay. So I have some experience that I would like to be able to bring to the Board of Education. As a small business owner, I'm constantly faced with the decisions of making, what you want versus what you need, and sometimes you can make both and sometimes you can't. Working with the PTA in Memorial School for the past 9 years, I've been able to work with all the staff, from not only the teaching staff, but the support staff, the office staff, the janitorial staff, and it's been enlightening as far as not only what the students need, but what the staff needs as a whole, and to be able to support that. I also work in a vocational field, so knowing that Old Bridge is great not only for the academics of our children, but that we offer a wide variety of vocational opportunities, because not every student is meant for the college path. And I think that's what separates Old Bridge from a lot of other school districts. So I would like to continue to support the vocational opportunities that our school district offers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Antuono. Ms. Jodry.
Hi. I think 3 reasons why the Old Bridge residents should vote for me for Board of Education would be, first and foremost, I have been a parent in the system. I value excellent education. Old Bridge schools have given my daughter a really great foundation from which to go out into the world and be successful. As a teacher and a paraprofessional in a school, I know what the day-to-day operations are in the school, and I know all the struggles and challenges. I know the rewards. I feel like I can be a voice for parents. I can be a voice for school staff. I can be a voice for administrators. I'm a taxpayer. I want the most for my money. I want success for our students, and I know that I can be the bridge for all of those roles, and I think that electing me to will do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jodry.
Yes.
Mr. Aguiza.
The 3 reasons why I should be voted for the Board of Education is, one, that we, the Old Bridge Board of Education, need to follow rules that what the Board of Education should be doing for the district. Second is that civility and respect should be present at all times when it comes to the education of our children. Politics should be removed from it at any cost. Secondly, I believe that fiscal responsibility should also be a necessity and considered by our voters, because we are the taxpayers and we have to be careful how our money is spent. That's why I believe I should be voted for.
Thank you, Mr. Akabueza. Mr. Hilfman.
3 reasons I believe Old Bridge residents should vote for me. I can put myself in the taxpayer's shoes. I know how tough it is paying what we have to pay in New Jersey, in Central Jersey, and Middlesex County. But I know that what's important here is our children's future and the future of Old Bridge. So I can put myself in the taxpayer's shoes as a taxpayer, but I can also put myself in as an educator, knowing full well how things are run from the minute you get into the building to the minute you leave the building, and how parents are a big part of that. And having been not just involved in the community, but involved on the Board of Education committee and also on the Education Foundation, I have the experience to see the big picture, to see what it takes to get the job done, to help our students and our children develop as the whole child. We're supposed to educate the whole child. And having the experience as a communicator, working in the district as a substitute, when I first decided to become a teacher, I worked as a substitute, but also seeing what it takes to get to the next level with our students. And I have the ability as a communicator to bring everybody together. So that's why I believe the residents should vote for me.
Thank you, Ms. Arbiol.
The 3 reasons why Old Bridge voters should vote for me. First, I'm a promoter of educational excellence as a lifelong student myself. I'm a champion of fiscal responsibility and efficient operation as a well-rounded operator. And lastly, I'm an advocate of diversity and inclusion as a woman of color. My professional and personal background will attest to these claims, and I believe it's about time that our Board of Education should reflect how diverse the student body of Old Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbiol. Mr. DeFranco.
3 reasons why people in the town should vote for me is, with my finance background, as we are in a fiscal crisis with the state aid cut, I have the understanding of how finance will work and how best to work with all parties, including to look at a best solution to budget budget through these constraints. Secondly, I don't have any agendas coming here. I don't have any political, religious, or personal vendettas really out there with anybody. I'm really just here just to make sure that our kids get the best education. And when I say kids, I mean all kids, not just certain kids, not individuals that side with, or families that side with me, but everybody. We are an education, we are a diverse community of thousands of people here. And lastly, I'm just a pragmatic thinker. I'm not going to go rush to judgment on anything, and I'm certainly not going to be doing that with the most important thing, which is the education of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Ms. Francisco?
Why do I think the community should vote for me? So first and foremost, I will always put kids first. I mean, they are the entire reason that any of us are here, why teachers become teachers, and I am always going to think of them every time a decision is presented to me. Secondly, as a Board of Ed member, I've got that parent role, but I've also got the teacher role. So I think combining those 2 perspectives gives me a very unique opportunity to work with all of those stakeholders on the Board of Ed. And lastly, I'm a mom of kids in the district now. I really think it's so important because I can see education through their eyes and through my work in the PTA. I spend a lot of time in the schools. I get to spend time with staff, with administration, with students. So I'm kind of just right in the thick of all of it right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. Ms. Bergen. Sorry, Bergen.
Hi, sorry. I also have no agenda here, so the first thing is I think everyone deserves a voice. I think everybody has an opinion and everybody has an idea, and communication is extremely important. Everybody should be heard, and there should be an avenue for that. Second, I live in Old Bridge. I've lived in Old Bridge my whole life. My kids live in Old Bridge. It is my life. I love the town. I want the school to succeed. I want everything in Old Bridge to succeed. And third, I'm passionate about the kids. I mean, they're our future. They deserve a great education, and they deserve everything that we can give to them. So as much as we can do, that's why I'm here. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Bergen. Mr. DePrima.
Thank you. 3 reasons. First one I think would be experience. As I alluded to in my opening, I've been through every facet of school involvement there is for a parent for the past 20-odd years. Obviously, 9 of that is on the board also. Leadership. I've been a pillar of the board in my time here, in various positions, titles, if you have. I'm very proud of my integrity and my concern, too. My children are grown, so I don't have any personal reason to be here. I'm here for your kids, all the children of the community, and the taxpayers, obviously. I've been through some important votes. Well, every vote is important, but I think you know what I mean. There's some that just are in the spotlight. If I didn't know what to do, I listened to the community. There's been many times where a lot of people came up to a podium and said why they wanted this or why they didn't want that. And since I was, I guess, at a crossroads, I listened to what the community wanted because they're the ones that put me here. I think that sums it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima. Mr. Dunn.
3 reasons why to vote Rich Dunn for the Board of Education. I do have an agenda, and that agenda is your children. You know, we hear that people are here for no agendas, but I have an agenda, and I want to ensure that the education and enrichment of our students is the finest in the state of New Jersey. That's why I'm running. And I do not like the direction this district is going right now. I spent 10 years of my life dedicated to this district, and I fought for what was right for our children, all children, fair and equitable education. Peripheral matters were important, but they didn't overstep for the real reason we were here. Also, another reason why you should vote me is because I'm a proven and known candidate. I've been up here, I've fought, I've done everything through my heart to ensure that all children in this district receive the fair and equitable services that they deserve. And I want to be back up here to make sure of that. Right now, this current board is listless and they have no direction. There's not a voice out there. And I want to be that voice of the child. Like I said earlier, education empowers children. It gives them a great start in life. And another reason why you should vote for me, because I'm a proven professional. I'm an executive of a real estate company. We own billions of dollars of real estate, and also I'm the fire chief here in Old Bridge Township. And I'm dedicated. And I'm going to put all that knowledge and power that I've learned over the years to this position like I did previously. I can promise you, your children will be in good hands with Rich Dunn on the Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Our second question will begin with Ms. D'Antuono. The second question is, how will you utilize social media if elected?
A lot of people have said the internet and social media is the best and worst thing that ever happened. And we all know that. As a business owner, I've had to use social media constantly to reach my customers because paper doesn't cut it anymore. So social media is necessary as a member of the Board of Education to keep in contact not only with what's going on in the town, but as a way for the members of the community, both those with students in the school, but also the taxpayers with students not in the school, because that's the finances that we're using, as a way to get in contact with me. So I would use social media as a platform to be accessible to the residents of Old Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Antuono. Ms. Jodry, I apologize. By the end of the night, I will have everyone's name correct.
It's fine, thank you. Yeah, you can say number 3. So I agree with Ms. D'Antuono that that social media can be a friend and social media can be terrible. And we a lot of times we put things on social media, we want to disseminate information, but it can also be a double-edged sword that it comes back at us and people end up being disrespectful, saying things that they probably shouldn't. And we want to be models for our kids first and foremost. We want to make sure that what we engage in social media is always respectful, responsible. I use social media for my candidacy. I'm putting out memes and signs and things like that, and using it in a positive way. But we have to really be aware that it can come back to be used in a negative way. So it can be the best thing, it can be the worst thing. I think that if we have to work to make sure that everything we put out is of value. We have to, if somebody wants to engage in something negative in social media, I think it's important to not engage, but on the side to kind of go back and find out why they feel the way they do. I think listening and being respectful and understanding people's point of view is really important, but to have things play out on social media is not the way to go.
Thank you, Ms. Jodry. Mr. Akubwiza.
Akubweza. As I stated earlier, everything we do, civility and respect should be present at all times when dealing with education of our children. So in the employment of social media, which is an instantaneous messaging platform, I think we ought to make sure that we use it appropriately and not to use it to be abusive or destructive to one another. So that's how I see social media. And as a person in the information system technology, I think social media is probably one of the best things that has happened to us in terms of communications. So it should be used with civility and respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akubwiza. Mr. Hilfman.
Communication is a two-way street, and we have to be role models for our kids and for our families, especially those who still live in Old Bridge. Social media can be the best thing as long as it's maintained the way it's supposed to be maintained, or the way it was first maintained. If we listen, and I teach my students and I teach my kids this, communication as a two-way street, listening is more important than speaking. If you don't hear, or in social media, see what's going on, then you can't respond to it the way you need to respond to it. We need to, I can't emphasize enough, we need to be role models for our kids. And social media, once something gets out there, it can't be pulled back. So as adults, especially as member of the Board of Education or educators, we have to make sure what we're sending out is something that we will live by, will not hurt anybody, and will be maintained or promoted because of the right reasons. So as long as we do that, and I believe that as members of the Board of Education, as adults, as taxpayers, as people in this town, we have to make sure that what we're sending out is the right message. And we wanted to make sure that it is progressively.
Thank you, Mr. Hilfman. Thank you. Sorry, hang on. Sorry, Ms. Arbiel, you may go.
I do acknowledge the harm of social media, but I also recognize the power of social media. As someone who grew up with and in social media, I know how to utilize it to engage our Old Bridge community at large. Board of Education members, children of the district, parents, and students should responsibly collaborate through social media to achieve our goals as a community. And I think that we need that in this community right now. So Board of Education may seem like out of touch. This is a way to reach more people and more constituency to achieve like whatever we need to achieve in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbiel. Mr. DeFranco.
As everybody said, there are the pros and cons of social media. One of the biggest cons is obviously, disinformation that gets sent out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that out there, especially now when you do have hot point items to talk about. What I would certainly use it for, and every board member should, is disseminating facts, disseminating things that are true based on actual facts that can be backed up with actual things, not memes that are just trying to bait people to get them, angry or whatnot. But also, we need to promote the school. Promote as much things that we have, as all the good things that happen in this school. Let alone the good things that happen. Also, it also allows the people to get engaged more with them, to be more informed, to know, okay, there's certain things going on. We have the strategic planning meeting coming up in a couple of weeks or days, things like that, and various activities that are just going on in the school to get people going, like whether that's be participating in football games and stuff like that, and just positive things really. But again, most importantly, facts. Unfortunately, much of social media can be used to the advantage of people who are misinformed, and I certainly wouldn't want to be using it for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Ms. Francisco.
So I too agree with most of what has been said. I do believe social media can be a blessing and a curse. I know as a mom, it's great for me. I get to share my family with other family and friends near and far. So I get to watch my kids grow up and all those wonderful things. Now I currently have a Board of Education page where I think it's great to be able to offer information pertinent to the district, happenings for the kids, like Mr. DeFranco said, games and things like that. You will find that all of my social media, whether it be personal, professional, is always positive and respectful. You'll never see me engage in a negative conversation over Facebook. Instead, I'd rather have a one-on-one, in-person conversation with someone. I do this for me and also to be a good role model for my kids for when they have social media, because at this point, I will have you know they have access to zero social media, because for little kids, I think we all know the dangers of that. So that's kind of where I stand.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. Ms. Bergen.
I also agree. I think it's a great way to communicate. I think, the back and forth, it's a great way to ask questions. It's a great way to have people directly access you. If you have your page, as I do, I just created it. I just have the page so people can ask you questions. And I always feel like I wouldn't say anything on social media that I wouldn't say if someone was standing in front of me. That's how I feel. I feel you need to be respectful, and if you're not going to say it to someone that's right here, then don't say it at all. That's just how I feel. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Bergen. Mr. DePrima.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, as everybody has said, it could be good and bad, but in my opinion, it's mostly bad. I was probably one of the first people to start a Facebook Board of Ed page. Before I put it online, I spoke to our attorney. I made sure I was doing everything correct, because you can't put information out there that could hurt you or your child or your neighbor or anything like that. My page is private. You have to be approved to be on it. I myself last year felt victimized a little by inaccuracies, things that were said about me that just were not right. I think it should be announcements only, and as everybody else has alluded to, games and activities and stuff like that. You could look back on my page for 10 years. I would never, ever engage in an argument. Some people have said things, just trying to stir others up. And it's like the game of telephone. You start off with one subject, and by the time it's done, it's like, what happened? This isn't even what we were talking about. Everybody obviously knows social media, internet can be an evil place. You don't want anything about your children out there, or even yourselves. You don't want anything out there that people could get a hold of and misconstrue or use incorrectly. As I said, my page is private, and I've seen some pages where they're actually registered as a political candidate. I don't get it, because as Mr. Dunn said earlier, and others also, there's no room for politics on the Board of Ed. Red, blue, green, whatever. It's about the children, not about your...
Thank you, Mr. DePrima.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunn.
Thank you. Social media can be a fantastic conduit of information. It's a great thing that's out there, but it can be also devastating. It could be used for bullying. It could be used for misinformation. So it has to be utilized in the right intentions to ensure that information is disseminated correctly. So it could be a blessing, or it can be a devastating situation. I can tell you, when you're serving on the Board of Education, you need to hold yourself to the highest standard when you post stuff on social media, especially when you utilize your name as a board member. You need to be positive, you need to be understanding, and you need to be inclusive. You need to ensure that you treat everyone with respect and treat everyone with dignity. Unfortunately, there's pages out there that don't do that. And I know when I was a board member, we were told continuously by our attorney that it matters if you're associated with the Board of Ed. your name is there. And you could put disclaimers, you can put all the information there saying, well, this is my opinion. It's not going to be good. So I would recommend that we utilize social media as a positive and not a negative. And I agree with all my candidates up here, candidates that social media should be utilized in a positive state, and I think that it will do us all well. Bullying
Thank you,
through
Mr.
social
Dunn.
media is intolerable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Giordano.
Yes, so I do have social media, and none of my accounts, I claim that I'm on the Old Bridge Board of Education, so I don't make that distinction. I'm not going to use it. I haven't used it to promote anything in the district. I also don't want to cause any noise. I've noticed that social media causes a lot of noise with residents, and if people are really concerned about the issues, they email me, and I appreciate those that do that. Other people that have large followings that aren't board members spread things around, like with the board vacancy, when I told people to give me their opinion on who to put into the vacant seat, someone posted it with my email, and I got dozens of votes and requests on who to put in. And we have a public relations portion of our district that could post anything that goes on, any current events. So I don't feel that I have to promote those sort of things, especially with the legal consequences and ethic consequences that could arise. And anything that I think is important, I could just say during the meetings, during old business and new business, which I've done for almost 3 years now. And, yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Okay, our next question will begin with Ms. Jodry. And the question is, share any experiences, personal or otherwise, that you believe speak to your commitment to serving the students who receive special education programming in our district.
So I'm going to go back to my experience that I discussed in my opening statement. I've been an educator for 26 years. I was first a para and then a teacher, general education teacher, but I fell in love with working with students with special needs. From there, I went on to get an advanced certification in autism and severe disabilities. I love everything about working with students in special education. I love working with their families. It's so creative for me because it's always making me think of ways to solve problems. And you know what? Sometimes I'll create another problem by trying to solve a problem. But that's okay because it's such a rewarding area of education for me. And I'm a board certified behavior analyst, so I work with students with all different challenges. I work with families. I'm still friendly with families of students that I was a paraprofessional for. It just is my passion, and it is so invigorating to me to try to think of ways to find supports, because in working in special education, you have to think out of the box. You have to ask students what it is that they like. You have to find out what their special interests are. And once you work to gain
Thank
the
you,
trust
Ms. Jodry.
of us.
Thank you. Mr. Akabueza.
While I don't have special experience in special education, I appreciate the work that special education teachers do. I have been involved in some situations where they have to deal with the kids that have, some similar problems. I believe as a Board of Education member, I will strive to support that all Oak Ridge students, whether they are, in special education or not, should get the best education that they deserve. And I'll support the special education teachers to do their job, which they have been doing so well in Oak Ridge system.
Thank you, Mr. Akabueza. Mr. Hilfman.
I'm going to start this by saying when I decided to become a teacher in 2002, Old Bridge did me a real solid by putting me in a basic skills class, which was the best training I ever had and have had since. I have the pleasure of working with a smaller group of students, And as Ms. Jodry said, you get to know them. You get to be part of their lives. As a gen ed teacher as well. But when you're working in a smaller environment, you can give the students more. And you spend the time working with them more individually. And it is phenomenal. And I've had the pleasure of working not just as a special ed teacher, but as a co-teacher with two of the best gen ed teachers I could ever imagine. And they helped me a great deal. So by helping me as a special education teacher, I have the ability to help my students even more. And you get involved with their families. And I mean, I'm on the phone constantly with their parents, mostly for good reasons. And I like that. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel like I'm actually accomplishing something. And when I said that I could go another 12 years, it's because of my special ed students, because I want to be there for them. And I have students I work with last year who keep coming up to me and saying, Mr. Helfman, how should I do this? And it's knowing them and seeing them grow over the years has been tremendous. So the best thing I could ever imagine, and I'm sorry it took so long to get there, is be a special education
Thank you, Mr.
teacher.
Helfman. Ms. Arbiel?
About 8 years ago, one of my siblings, who I was the core guardian, was having an issue with education. We didn't know if it's a learning disability or something like that. It was just, she was struggling. And I was so thankful that she was put in a special education program, and suddenly her perspective changed. And that to me is very special. And part of the reason why I'm interested in being a member of the Board of Education is to really collaborate with all the stakeholders to improve our special education program. I know we have one of the best in the, maybe not in the region, but in our state. And I would just like to get that better and have more students really benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbiel. Mr. DeFranco?
I don't have any direct experience, but I think the biggest thing that I offer is just avoid, or somebody to be there to listen. You know, I think the biggest thing is knowing when you don't know everything. You know, you reach out to the people that do. You know, we need to work more with SEPTA, CPAD, getting an understanding of the people who know best from those situations, how to work and get advice from them. You know, and that's really my biggest take is, you know, engage with them, be more of a team effort that, you know, we're all working together, because again, special education, they're still students in our schools. They should be treated no differently and be given all the same opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Ms. Francisco?
So like I stated earlier, I was a general education teacher in an inclusion classroom for 7 of my 10 years teaching. And the setup for me was full day, both teachers in the classroom, which was an amazing experience. You would have a really difficult time if you walked into my classroom picking out who the gen ed teacher was and who the special ed teacher was. And the same was true for the students, which of course was always the ultimate goal. So I have a lot of experience being in there with kids. I haven't seen this setup since my kids have been going to school, so I'm really curious to work with organizations like SEPTA and CPAG and our administration to see what kinds of setups are best for all of our inclusion students. And I'm really looking forward to being part of that creative process because it's ever changing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. Ms. Berghan?
So I don't have any firsthand knowledge. My husband and we do fostering, and a couple of years ago, our foster daughter was in the Old Bridge school system, and many problems came along with that, and Old Bridge was amazing. They had therapists and they had counselors, and they just helped at every avenue, and it was hard, but they were right there for her. So I love that. I think that's great, and I would love to learn a lot more. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Berghan. Mr. DePrima?
First off, every student in the district deserves the same opportunity as every other student. No, whatever their abilities, whatever their differences, they're all students of the district. It's funny, a few years ago, myself and one of my board colleagues went to a meeting, and we were made to feel a little intimidated and stupid, actually, because we were told we didn't know what a lot of the acronyms meant. From that day on, we learned that we had to know. As a board member, we had to represent everybody. I could speak for myself at this point. I've gotten very close with the SEPTA and CPAG people. I totally respect what they do, and I've helped them wherever I possibly could along the years. A very wise man, Mr. Cittadino, once said, the biggest room in any organization is the room for improvement. We can't stop. We have to keep improving, whether it's special ed or general ed or sports or music, whatever. We got to keep going, and hopefully I could be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima. Mr. Dunn?
Special education here in Old Bridge is very close to my heart. My daughter was a recipient for a very long time of the services provided, and I can tell you unequivocally that our special needs programs here in Old Bridge are the finest in the state of New Jersey, and I'm very proud of that. And you know, there's so many people to thank who made that program so successful. You know, Barbara Cuthbert, Jim Toohey, Teresa Burns, Allison Boss, Stephanie Babbitts, Diane Michaels, you know, all these wonderful teachers, Lindsay Field, Tracy Robinson, we have Virginia Pirro, Carol Ann, there's a lot of people who work very hard for this program, and we are the finest. And we're going to continue fighting for our children who are the most vulnerable. And I can tell you, I was there with the parents. I understand what they went through because I went through it. And we were a great support structure. And we need to continue that because every child deserves a fair and equitable education regardless. And that's something I want to fight for. And I'm going to continue fighting for that because I saw what it did for my daughter, and I want to make sure we continue it for all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Giordano?
Yes, while I do not have any special education accreditations like others have, my past 3 years as a board member, I do feel like I have a somewhat good relationship with the special education committees around here. I remember last year there was a transportation controversy, and a bunch of supporters of this movement came to the meeting and they spoke, and then during the new business I brought up, are we going to discuss this, and then we ended up discussing it during the executive session. So I feel like as long as the special education parents and students reach out to me, there's room for me to come up with a solution to whatever problems they have.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Ms. D'Antuono?
Growing up in the 4-H program, I encountered children of all different abilities. So I didn't know of one child over, you know, with special needs over another. Everyone was just children. As I have been more involved with the PTA, we started a teacher grant, not only to provide our classroom teachers with something, but our support staff as well. Pre-COVID, I was working on more trying to get PTA involved with SEPTA because it was an area that I wasn't familiar with. It wasn't something I was exposed to. I worked with our special education staff to try and figure out, like, what do the kids need, what can we help from the PTA standpoint. And now, what's quote unquote post-COVID, I am becoming more aware of resources to further my education. Diane Michaels is probably sorry she met me because I'm on the phone with her all the time. Diane, what's this mean? What's this mean? Because like others have said, I don't know. So I go to those that do so that they can enlighten me so that I can do what I can help with from the resources that I have, but also meet them where people need to be. So although I don't have personal experience, it's something I'm open to learning more about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Antuono. Our next question is for our two current Board of Education members, Mr. Giordano and Ms. Francisco. We'll start with Mr. Giordano. How have your words, votes, and actions as current Board of Education members to the district, specifically student populations such as students with disabilities and LGBTQ+ students?
Okay, so my votes in general, I basically go over what the public seems to want based on what they're saying, and I go based on what I think is the best decision. I know I've abstained and voted no on some certain items. Some abstentions were made because things that have to be approved that I don't agree with, I'm not going to vote no or vote yes, so I abstained from that. And previously with the curriculum vote, many people got confused on what we actually did. People thought we tabled it, but we actually voted no on it. And I think going forward, the board should eliminate the lingo of tabling resolutions, because every no vote is essentially a table vote, because every agenda, things could get brought up. And I don't think I voted in any way that offends any group of people, so I'm proud to say that. And like I said, every vote has a meaning, and a bunch of people have emailed me why I voted no on something, why I abstained from something, and I've given them the best answer possible for why I did that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Ms. Francisco?
Okay, so my votes so far in the short time that I have been on the Board of Education have not pertained to being inclusive. I would always vote for inclusivity, and anybody who knows me and who knows me knows either one of my girls or my husband knows that. My vote, and if we're talking about the health standards, which I'm pretty sure is what this question is aimed at, my vote against that is voting against inappropriateness in the classroom, which to me has absolutely nothing to do with inclusivity. To me, they are two completely separate things. So that's the best I can do in answering that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. Sorry. Our next question will begin with Mr. Akabueze. And this is the question. If you were elected to a seat on the Board of Education, what committees would you be interested in chairing? And are there any areas missing from the list of committees?
I would probably like to be in a committee that promotes diversity, that should reflect what the city is now all about. I would also like to be in maybe finance committee, so that we can properly address budget issues and find what areas to increase our funding in order to make sure that every Old Bridge student gets the best education they can have, as well as making sure that no Old Bridge student is excluded from participating in sports activities and extracurricular activities just because of budgetary issues.
Thank you, Mr. Akabueza. Mr. Hiltman.
Having written curriculum from K through 12 and have some experiences also higher education, my main focus would be either curriculum or will be curriculum and communication, because they go hand in hand. I've seen a lot of what's gone on over the last 3 months especially, and putting the two together will be helpful not just to the students but to the community. My experience in curriculum ranges from gen ed to special ed to the arts. The arts are very close to me. But my communication experience as well. And having been a reporter locally and also having been an educator, I think putting the two of them together would be excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Hiltman. Ms. Arbiel.
I'm pretty interested in the Finance Committee because of my proven track records in leading and managing multi-million budget. I think I can really help with that committee, but also the diversity and inclusion with Cornelius. I think that's very important. I think we need to attract more people of color, not only as it reflects our student body, but also our workers, our workforce. And I think there's a beauty in the diversity. All that different views can only help our student achieve academic excellence and really opening their minds in what's out there in the world, and definitely promote communication amongst the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbiel. Mr. DeFranco.
I certainly want to be part of, or request to be part of the Finance Committee. Again, my background is in finance for 21 years in credit and risk management. I certainly can provide input there that I think would be beneficial to this district. I would also like to be a part of the curriculum committee. Though I'm not a teacher, I do many. One of the bigger parts is I understand that much of what goes in there is coming from the teachers themselves. They're the ones who write our curriculum. So getting the facts out there to actually what is really out there and what's really being taught and going to be taught in class, I think is important, because yes, we need feedback from the parents. We want feedback from the parents. But the feedback, when we're discussing things with the parents, we need to be informed, provide them the actual true information of really what's out there. Excuse me. And another committee I'd certainly like to be a participant, which is, it's not necessarily, it's an ad hoc committee right now, but it's the DEIB committee. I participated in the first instance of it, And I think that is good. You know, we need to make sure that, you know, everybody in this district, you know, feels as though they can be a part of it. I've been at numerous meetings where, you know, you've had people in marginalized groups come up and say their children just don't feel like they want to be in this school, like that they don't feel like they're a part of it. That's the worst thing to hear. Because how are you ever going to get to that person a true education? And, you know, I certainly would want to be someone to be part of that committee that would help improve that within our district.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Ms. Francisco.
So as a current Board of Education member, I am on the Curriculum and Special Services Committee, which is right where I feel like I belong, especially with my background in teaching, and if elected, I would like to stay there. I'm also interested in the Community Relations Committee. I've made a lot of connections with parents and community members, being PTA president, my girls in school, so I'm a people person, and I think I would be good there too. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. Ms. Burghan?
I would like to be part of the curriculum and the communication. I think it's important that parents have input and that the curriculum is explained and parents back and forth, and then, you know, things can be changed if we need to change them, but just that everyone understands so there's no misconceptions, you know, no saying one thing and that's not really what it is, and people get confused and then people get angry. So if everyone, I guess if the teachers and the parents communicate, then everyone will know exactly what's happening. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Burkhan. Mr. DePrima.
As a excuse me, as a board member and a non-member, I've been involved with probably pretty much every committee there is through the years. Ironically, chair whole tenure as a board member of 9 years. It underwent a few different name changes, but I believe it's currently called the Athletics Extracurricular Committee. Some people might think it's not as important as curriculum or finance or anything like that, but it is. We have an outstanding athletic program. They need representation also. It's not just, we have what we call a comprehensive school. We offer everything from, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a blue-collar worker, whatever you want to do, it's here. So in my opinion, athletics and extracurricular are just as important as everything else. And if back on the board, I'd love to regain control of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima. Mr. Dunn.
Thank you. As we know, the committee structure in the Board of Education is a very important tool, and it must be utilized correctly to ensure that we hear the residents from this great town. The committee structure is paramount to the success of the operation of the Board of Education. If elected, I would love to be the Finance, Building, Grounds, and Transportation Chair once again. I think that, you know, I contributed a tremendous amount of professional advice during my tenure. We had a $16 million energy savings plan that was implemented when I was the chair, and also I was very instrumental in ensuring that we got top dollar for the Nike base or the transportation hub. We got $10 million, I believe is the number, and that wouldn't have come to fruition without my professional advice. Quite honestly, I think that we should also have a new committee put into place, that's safety and security. I think that we need to really take that into account and work. I know a lot of our security measures are very sensitive and quiet, but a committee should be able to hear and work with the administration to ensure that we are safe and secure. Yes, the chief of the police department and the superintendent are very highly involved, but I think there should be a committee for the Board of Ed. Also, strategic planning, very, very important. As we know, we have a meeting coming up on the 13th. We need to have a good, sound strategic plan for this district for our students. And you know what? That's one of the committees I would love to chair and make sure that we do have a 5-year plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Giordano.
Yeah, so 3 of my favorite committees are the curriculum or extracurriculum, finance, and policy committees. I was trying to bring it up at the first curriculum meeting, but things went on out of hand. But I was going to mention how we should have a program to basically get kids to take as many AP exams, CLEP exams as possible so that they could save tens of thousands of dollars in tuition each semester or each year. So that's something I would enjoy doing if I'm reelected. The finance committee is also good because you'll learn from Mr. Mara how the finances actually work, because the school accounting is very different than other systems of accounting than the private sector. And the policy committee is, it gives the public a chance to actually read all the policies, because we go through them quickly and most of the time we just vote yes on them, but when you go to the policy meetings, you get to actually see what we're voting on and if we could not approve something or delay something, or when we have to remove certain policies. And we also have a policy meeting coming up pretty soon. We don't have a set date yet, but it's coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Ms. D'Antuono?
If elected, I would like to get involved with the Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee. We have amazing teachers, amazing opportunities for our students, but they're not going to do well if we have buildings and grounds that aren't, that are crumbling or falling apart, or, I mean, not that they're crumbling, but like the parking lots where the kids play for, in the elementary school for recess, the grounds, there's holes and things that we've stumbled upon as far as at elementary level, seeing my daughter in the sports at middle school. But also, when the kids get on the school bus and there's a new bus driver, why are they having a piece of paper and not something more modern and technological to see their route? I'm not seeing safety on the transportation end with our bus drivers holding a piece of paper on what route they have to do, trying to figure out where they're going. So those are the two committees I'd like to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Antuono. Ms. Jodry?
Thank you. I'd be proud to be on any committee where my experience could be helpful, but I'm sure nobody's going to be surprised to hear that my first choice would be the Special Education Committee. But in addition to that, I also have experience writing curriculum. I'd love to serve on a committee that did that. I've written special ed, gen ed curriculum. I think that, I understand the importance of it being grade appropriate, age appropriate, accessible by all, and with input from families in the community. So I understand that, and I'd love to be on a committee. I think the committee that goes kind of hand in hand with those committees is the Community Relations Committee, because then you get to interact with the families and community, and I think those three committees together really benefit our kids. I don't know if you can be on more than one committee, but I think those three committees together, if I had my choice, it would be all or one of those.
Thank you, Ms. Jodry. Our next question will begin with candidate number 5, Lance Hillman. Excuse me. I had to screw up your name once, Everyone else got it, so. One of the most important roles of a Board of Education member is the appointment of the CSA. What is your position on reappointing the current superintendents?
I've had the pleasure of knowing Mr. Citadino since I taught in Elizabeth, by reputation, because he was there and I was there for a short time. When he came over to Sauk, I was involved as much as I possibly could be, because Mrs. Hilfman was a teacher at Sauk. So I had the pleasure of working with him then and seeing him grow. I have seen him grow a lot. And having seen what we've gone through over the last 2 years, and knowing that he was on the phone every day explaining what was going on and what needed to happen, I felt, as a taxpayer, as a resident, I felt comforted by the fact that he could do this. I think he's young enough, if not in age, at least in spirit, to be able to continue to give Old Bridge his best. And I think his best has been real good for Old Bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Hilfman. Ms. Arbiel?
I don't know the person personally, and I will not claim that I know all the requirements that need to be so that we can reappoint or not reappoint someone. But my take in that is really listen to the community at large and what do they think about it. And I think I will just reflect whatever I will get from the community at large and their opinion on reappointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbiel. Mr. DeFranco?
I think Mr. Citadino is certainly qualified for the job. Do I agree with all his decisions throughout, my time, at least, focusing on the school district? No. And I'm probably going to say most people up here are never going to say they're 100% in agreement. But what I understand, though, is, he's certainly out here for the best interest of our students, and he's certainly qualified for it. He in most part, takes feedback from people and, tries to address that with all those in the community. So I feel as though, I would reappoint him or extend him a contract if, I was on the board. But again, it's not about agreeing with the individual 100% of the time. It's understanding where they're coming from and their willingness to work where there is disagreement. And I think he's willing in most part to do that.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Ms. Francisco.
So I think that this is a decision that would obviously have to be discussed at great length. It would be really difficult, I think, for me or a lot of people here to say hands down, yes, we need a new superintendent. No, we don't need a new superintendent. But I will say this. I'm in favor of anybody who is always going to put the children first and who is able to push out all the other politics and ideas that come into play when our kids are the ones and the reasons why we're here. And also to say that it's important to note we all are going to disagree at times. We're never all going to be on the same page. So it's important for communication so that we can understand where each other is coming from. So whoever is our superintendent now or in the future has to be someone who can be positive and a transparent leader.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. See, I've got your name wrong too. So, Ms. Burkhan.
I would agree. I don't know Mr. Cittadino very well, but I think the community would be who we'd have to speak with and see what they thought. The parents with the kids that attend the school, everyone in the community and what they think. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Burkhan. Mr. DePrima.
Okay, once again, I have a little story. About 10 years ago, I was part of the group that hired Mr. Cittadino. I remember the night specifically. There was a few people who were definitely no's. There was a few people who were definitely yes. Myself and another colleague at the time were undecided. We wanted the best choice. We weren't going to just say yes because he was the popular vote or no because he wasn't the popular vote. We listened to everything that every candidate had to say that night, and he was the best choice. That's, I guess, 10 years ago. Unless anything has changed or if I'm incorrect, he's under contract, so this is kind of a moot point anyway. There's nothing to reappoint. Unless I forgot something, I don't know. Obviously, I support him now. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that a lot of the general public is not privy to. I remember my first night as president of the board. I got a call at 4 o'clock in the morning saying, "Hi, Sal, it's Mr. Dave Cittadino. No school today." Okay, thanks. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. But he was there on the ball doing his job, and he hasn't stopped since.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima. Mr. Dunn?
So let's be clear. My wife is an employee of this district. She is a teacher at Cooper Elementary School. So I would be conflicted from appointing David Cittadino back to his position. However, if I had that opportunity and if I was on the board, I would be a huge, huge supporter of David Cittadino. He has been a wonderful person. He's worked diligently. He has the interests of our children at heart. He works so hard for our children, and it's remarkable how far he has brought this district. Yes, he has brought this district with the wonderful teachers and staff that we have here. So for us to say that we wouldn't reappoint him, I think we're being disingenuous. I can tell you unequivocally, for certainty, that there are members on the board who have a vendetta against Mr. Cittadino. They have already said they will not reappoint him regardless of the fact. Quite frankly, to have that attitude is wrong. And I know firsthand who these members are, and they have vendettas, and you know what? You should not have a vendetta against the superintendent, and if that's going to skew your opinion of him, then you shouldn't be able to vote. You should recuse yourself. But David has done a lot of great for this district. I disagreed with David during COVID. I thought he should have opened the school sooner. I was against the mask mandate. I believe that was a problem between him and I. We had our friction. However, I can tell you with much certainty, he is a genuine, hardworking superintendent of schools, and he has brought this district to where it's at. So I would be in favor, and I would support him tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Giordano.
Yes, without evaluating him publicly based on his performance as a current board member, I know that whatever his responsibilities are when I have evaluated him in the past. He's satisfied them. I want to be careful with how I talk about this. But publicly, I know he took a salary freeze. I think 1 year he took a reduced salary, and he's very involved with the community, and he donated backpacks earlier this year. His social media is very good. He posts things that are going on, ways to help people. I know there were some bad events that have happened recently, and he's on top of that, making sure people get the resources they need during those bad times. So like I said, as a current board member, I'm not really supposed to evaluate him publicly like this, but he was my superintendent when I was in high school. He's very kind to me, and I approve of what he's been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Ms. D'Antuono.
Sorry, stop. Anytime I've had dealings with Mr. Cittadino, from the point as a parent when my oldest was in kindergarten, to now, I find him very approachable and able to discuss any concerns that I've had, so I appreciate that, and I think that's a quality that's important. I have seen him interact and be part of the community, not just, stay in the administration building. I see him in the schools, I see him at the games, I see him at events supporting the children. I'm not familiar with the process and the fact of, is it just a reissue or is it an interview and a reissue? So without proper information as far as, one or none, that's not a judgment call I'm ready to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Antuono. Ms. Jodry.
Thank you. So whether or not everyone agreed or disagreed with every decision that he's made, I think we can all agree that he listens to people in the community. I think we can agree that he navigated Old Bridge School District through a never-before experienced health emergency. He had no he had no previous experience with this kind of health emergency that we all experienced from which to base decisions on, and I think most people can agree that every decision he made in the best interest of staff and students. And I don't think you can really ask more than anybody than that, just to always put our staff and students foremost and make every decision, just all about them. And I think in that respect, he's done that. Everybody he respects people, he listens to people, so you can have disagreements with some of the decisions he made, but I think there's some things that we can completely agree on as a group.
Thank you, Ms. Jodry. Mr. Akubweze.
I have known Mr. Cittadino right from Salk School where my two older sons went through. I don't know if he knows me very well, but I had often gone to him when I got a call about the students doing, the boys doing what boys normally do. So he's a very personable person. He listens very well. He's on top of things. And I also like the approach they took during the COVID by giving parents an opportunity to either have your child come to school or, do homeschooling. I know I put my son to do the school from home because I believe that managing the students in school during the COVID is a very hard thing to do. So I won't have a problem reappointing him because I know he has a good heart and he communicates very well with the parents. I know that for a fact because I dealt with him from the Salk School to now the Old Bridge High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akubweze. Our next question is also for everyone, and we will begin with Ms. Arbiel. What are your views on the role of religion in the public school?
Oh, okay. I believe we should just acknowledge the existence of it and respect everyone, but I don't think it should be an indicator or determination of any policies or procedures that need to be done in a school district. And I think I'll just leave it at that, just like by the state and religion should be separated. I believe that it should be acknowledged, but it should not be the only basis when we make decisions for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbio. Mr. DeFranco.
There's really no discussion that, in my opinion, that needs to be had because there are laws that have. It's a separation of church and state. You know, religion shouldn't be taught in the schools primarily because there's diverse communities out there. Not one religion in a town. And so, you know, again, it just follows the law, which is, you know, separation of church and state. We shouldn't be basing our decisions on public education on any religious background, whether it be, you know, one I follow or, you know, one somebody else follows.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Ms. Francisco.
I think it's wonderful when children have the opportunity to learn about different cultures and different celebrations that, you know, people have in their families. And just like it's always been, I don't think there's any need to go into specifics about all of that because, like a lot of people are saying, everybody, you know, lives in their home with the traditions and cultures that their, you know, families raise them in. So I think that the way it is right now is the way that it should be. But I do think it's nice when kids have the opportunity to learn about different cultures and where other kids are coming from. But again, not with super specifics and teaching religion, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. Ms. Burkham.
I agree. I think it's separation of church and state, and everybody celebrates different religions, and that's fine, but it shouldn't be taught in school at all. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Burkham. Mr. DePrimo.
Yeah, that's kind of a misleading question. As Mr. DeFranco and pretty much everybody else has said, you don't have a choice. It's separation of church and state. We have, maybe 40 people in this room tonight, probably 20 different religions, but everybody should be respected for what they believe in. I consider myself a fairly religious person. I don't stand on a corner preaching, but I respect what I've been taught through the years, and I respect what everybody else has been taught through the years, but it doesn't belong in a public school.
Thank you, Mr. DePrimo. Mr. Dunn?
I agree that religion does not belong in the public schools. Obviously, there is a separation of church and state, and we need to be cognizant and very careful on how we approach this. However, as we know, everyone is equal. Everyone is treated with dignity, regardless of what religion you are. And quite honestly, you know, as long as we're teaching good values and respectful educational enrichment, I think that religion has no place in the public schools. And quite frankly, you know, we are one. Regardless of what religion you are, we are Old Bridge. And we need to stay together and learn together and be successful through educational enrichment. And religion and your differences, whatever it is shouldn't be part of the decision making. So I agree, religion should not be part of education and part of the program.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Giordano.
Yeah, so I know some people believe in religions. It helps them, it gives them values in some sorts. And I know at the second curriculum meeting, people were using religious beliefs as a way to go against certain things in the curriculum. I don't go into religious arguments or anything. I try to not get involved with anything like that. So I think that's where the question stems from. And yeah, so I've always believed that, because I just don't engage in the religious debates or religious teachings. I have my own values that are based on what I think is right, what my family thinks is right, and it's better that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Ms. D'Antuono.
As Sal alluded to at the second curriculum meeting, we saw where one person's religion offended, you know, the use of one's religion offended someone else because of the way they chose to use it. I don't think religion as lessons has a place in our school system, but religions as part of our students' culture is to be honored and accepted. So in that sense, religion has a place in our school because it's part of who our student body and our staff members are, but it's part of our lesson and curriculum. It does not. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Antuono. Ms. Jodry.
I agree with everybody here that there's a separation of church and state. Religion should not be taught in public schools. But I do think, like Mr. Francisco said, that it's important to learn about other cultures so students can develop a respect and an appreciation for other people. I think that they should learn to appreciate diversity because it just enriches all of us. But the actual teaching of religion, it does not belong in school.
Thank you, Ms. Chaudhry. Mr. Akabueze.
I believe the way it is now, religion out of school, out of public school, is best thing to go by, because it will be a chaos when we have all kinds of religion in school, and every student will be, angling to have theirs promoted. The Muslims, Christians, Hindu. I think it would be impossible to handle. So it is better to have it the way we have it now. Any parent who opts to want to have their children in a particular religious setting can opt to private schools. I know my daughter attended private school, Catholic school, all through her schooling, and that was good as well. Maybe we can replace religion in school with a uniform in public school, so that everybody will be wearing the same outfit to come to school, instead of people trying to kids wearing different fashions and making fun of others who may not, wear the same thing, afford the same thing they have. So I think the way it is now is good. Religion out of public school.
Thank you, Mr. Akabueze. Mr. Hilfman.
I think we all feel the same way about religion being taught in public school. It's a wonderful thing, but more importantly than anything, and we talked about diversity, we talked about inclusivity, we talked about teaching respect. Religion belongs in the home, and it belongs in other options, but it does not belong in the public school, because it doesn't include everybody. It excludes more people than not. So I believe in the separation of church and state.
Thank you, Mr. Hilfman. Our next question is also for all candidates, beginning with Mr. DeFranco. What do you feel are the most urgent issues facing our district today?
I think the biggest is the strategic planning. We are already almost 6 months past the initial plan lapsing, which is certainly concerning to me. As was stated before, we are a community that is growing. For the last few years, yes, we've been contracting, but as everybody can see, there's building throughout Old Bridge, and if we don't get a sound foundation right now, we're going to be setting ourselves up to be just not reaping any good. Nothing good is going to come of it. Let's put it that way. But also, we need to also start addressing the diversity and inclusion, because as we've seen in numerous meetings, people have been many marginalized people coming out and saying they do just not feel welcome in the school. Like, we can have the phrases of "we are one," but if we have students coming up to board meetings stating that they're saddened by some of the stuff that's said at these board meetings, or just bringing up things that they've encountered in the schools. When I was at the DEI meeting, there was an elementary level student who came in, and her mother said that the child was called a racial slur. This is an elementary, and that child didn't want to go back to school. Like, how do we help a child with education there if they don't even feel as though they're part of the school? So that's certainly, to me, a big issue. And we certainly, right now with politics and everything, the country.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Ms. Francisco.
How did you phrase that question? Can you just say it again?
What do you think are the most urgent issues facing our district today?
Okay, so I think that I could probably speak for most in saying that money is always an issue. Getting creative is redefined year after year. So I see that as being an issue, and I don't ever see that issue going away. So I think that no matter who's up here and who's elected, that's something that we're going to have to deal with. I think that something right now would be our curriculum, and making sure that it is challenging, that it is rigorous, that we are providing all students with an excellent education, and also an age-appropriate education. And collaboration, I think we have a lot of work to do in this area. There's almost always common ground that we can find as human beings. And that's something that I teach my girls too, to just try to find that common ground. So I think that is, the last thing that comes to mind when we have things that we can work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. Ms. Bergan.
I would agree, curriculum, absolutely. And I do worry. I see buildings everywhere, and I wonder, we're going to have enough schools. When my girls were in school, they had one-way hallways in the high schools. So I really do wonder if we are going to have enough money and enough space for all of the people moving to the area, and how are we going to plan ahead for that? And I guess those would be my two biggest things, curriculum and space for new students.
Thank you, Ms. Bergan. Mr. DePrima.
As Mrs. Francisco alluded to, I think finances is a big issue. As everybody probably knows, we've had some major budget cuts over the past few years, and we had to make do with what we had. I'm very proud to say that we went through it with minimal cuts. I don't know what this year or next year brings after additional funding cuts. It's just like you run your home. If a quart of milk goes up, you still need the quart of milk, so you got to find a way to buy it. Special ed, as I said before, special ed is a big part of the Old Bridge Township School District. They're on the map. People look towards us as a purveyor of special ed. It wasn't always like that, but it's gotten better, and it's going to get better. Third, I'm going to combine normalcy and curriculum. Obviously, curriculum is the hot topic right now. There's a lot of things going on. I think there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion, but not being a board member, not being privy to what goes on behind the scenes, I don't want to say too much. And normalcy. We're finally getting back to where we should be. It's been a rough 2 years. Nobody in this planet has ever experienced what we went through. But I think we're on the right track to getting back there, and that also needs some work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima. Mr. Dunn.
Yes, there are many major issues that, we would need to tackle. And, first and foremost is the financial state of the district. We were at $160 million a year, now we're down to $150 million a year, and there's going to be another $10 million taken away from us by the state. So that's a priority. We need to make sure we have monies to fund our programs and ensure our children get the finest education. The curriculum is a mess. They're still teaching journeys in our schools. That's a program for reading that was established 10 years ago. Why aren't we talking about that? We're so concerned about, peripheral issues, but we're not worrying about the nuts and bolts that make our children good and get them educated. And that's important. We need a new reading program. Journeys is outdated, and it's not doing its job. Math and Focus was a great program. We went to Envisions. Now this program is run amok. They've been here 5, 6, 7 years. As you know, curriculum needs to change every 5 years, so you're staying consistent and staying with the cutting edge of technology. Strategic planning, very important. We need to make sure that's put in place. We need to know which direction this district is going, money-wise, facility-wise, educational-wise, et cetera, et cetera. Special needs. We need enhanced programs for our children. Every child has to be treated fair and equitably. They need to have every resource possible. And I feel that, we're starting to get away from that. And fourth would be bring back civility and harmony to the Board of Education. This board has been divisive. They've been...
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you.
Mr. Giordano.
Yes, so one of my two biggest issues is extravagant spending. I know we should be spending money only on general education purposes and try to limit the amount we put into capital reserves, because once they get put in there, they can't be taken out, as we all know very well. And another thing is the high schoolers being ready for college. 3 years ago, I was talking about this, trying to get students to graduate with their bachelor's in 3 years or even 2 years like I did. And now the conversation is just out of control. We're now forgiving people for getting loans. And to think of all the money that's being forgiven for these loans, there's obviously a problem with the cost-benefit analysis of college degrees. And if we could help our students get them in a short period of time to literally save millions each year, if each student even saves 1 year in tuition, because we could talk about property taxes all we want, but if you're going to make the investment to go to college, we should help you reduce that as much as possible. That's the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Ms. D'Antuono.
I think one of the things that we could improve upon district-wide is the community's faith in the Board of Education. We're elected here to put our kids first, and there's some members of our community that don't feel that the board is putting our kids first. So we need to regain the community's trust and put the kids first. Obviously, finances, as has been mentioned, because the finances is going to control what our curriculum is, how our buildings are kept up, and things like that. I have noticed more amongst our student body, more DEI issues, so that I think needs to be improved upon and encouraged the way we have been starting to touch upon it, but I think that's, and finally, the mental health of our students. It's been said by various community members, you know, the mental health of our students kind of took a hit over COVID. Although the focus is on getting them back to where they need to be academically, I think the mental health of our students hasn't really been touched upon or taken care of as much as we should have these past few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Antuono. Ms. Jodry.
Thank you. Well, of course, I think one of the most important issues is the budget and trying to figure out where money can be saved, and I think all stakeholders should be consulted about that in schools. I think teachers, paraprofessionals, people who work on the ground day to day, I think they have a lot of input and can help discuss and figure out where money can be saved. I think that it was important when we came off the pandemic, to assess learning loss in our students, but I think we have to be really vigilant to continue to do that, because although there have been improvements in many areas, I think that we can't become complacent, and we have to do that so we can continue to support our kids. But I think, as Ms. D'Antonio just said, that I think we have to really address also the social, emotional, and mental health needs of our students, because there are a lot of students, more than ever, there are students who are at risk, and we can't let them fall through the cracks. We owe it to them to provide services and things that they need to help them after everything they've been through, because, you know, students missed out on a couple of years of education through this whole thing. So we really can't underestimate that. I think also the curriculum should be updated, and it should be reflective of improvements in instruction over the years. I think
Thank you, Ms. Jodry. Mr. Akubezwa.
I think some of the most important things for me would be like budget. How do we recoup the money that the district will be losing from the state based on the past votes of the current board? How do we recoup, replace the money that will be taken away from us? Where do we save money? What are we going to cut that wouldn't affect our Old Bridge students? And the other portion for me is also diversity. Since we're in the business of educating the future leaders of our community and the country, does Old Bridge school system reflect the diversity, the staffing and board members? Does it reflect the diversity that we have in Old Bridge currently? Those are important issues that need to be looked into as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akubezwa. Mr. Hilfman.
We've touched on a lot of issues. I think the most urgent issues facing the district are, yes, what to do and how to make the state aid cut work for us in certain ways. I think if the Board of Ed gets the community more involved in a positive way, the community will feel more respected and want to be more involved in a positive way. We need to take steps forward. Yes, we not only missed education, or the educational aspect may have taken a hit over the last 2 years, but we also have to approach the social aspect that our students faced, not being in school with their colleagues, with other students. It's a growth. We need to educate the entire child, the whole child, And losing the last 2 years, we also lost a great deal of social connection between them. I think we also need to figure out a way to maintain or better the teacher-student ratio. The class sizes are too big. If they're too big, our students aren't learning as much as they possibly can. So it's unfortunately, it was a perfect storm the last couple of years. So we need to overcome that, and we need to figure out a way as a Board of Education how to overcome that, getting the students involved, getting the children involved with each other and reminding them what it's like to be involved face-to-face on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mr. Hilfman. Ms. Arbiel.
First issue I need to focus on is the finance budget. As like a lot of people here mentioned already, we need to come up with a creative solution to tackle that. I'm very glad that someone brought out the strategic planning. That plan, we're really lagging on it, and if we must get back on track, or if we did not achieve those goals, we need to acknowledge it and improve upon it on that one. And lastly is true diversity and inclusion. We have to remember diversity is everyone represented, and inclusivity or inclusion does everybody have the voice to be heard. As a community, I think we need to be cognizant of that and make sure that it is not just an empty statement and just a buzzword that we use to be seen relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbiel. Our next question is for Mr. Giordano. Since January, there have been 18 board meetings plus 1 curriculum meeting of the whole to hear the residents of the new health curriculum. Of those 19 meetings, you missed 9, just about half. You missed critical votes impacting the future of our children. Based on your attendance and record for not showing up for the people of Old Bridge, why do you deserve another term?
Well, up until recently when I went back to college, I had been taking meetings off because the way Kane University operates its master's degree program, they have night classes which interfere with my schedule, which I was not aware of 3 years ago. I didn't think I would be in this position 3 years ago, considering everything that happened. Now, people reach out to me for my opinions on things, and I answer them to the best of my ability, and that's much more productive than maybe people that just show up and they're either mute on certain subjects or they don't give their opinions. I will be done with my master's degree this December, so for the new term, I won't be missing any meetings due to my school obligations. And yeah, as I said before, I think I provide more information on how I vote, because the voting is what matters. You know, people could give opinions, people could make noise on social media and things like that. But I feel like even with my absences in certain meetings, I feel like I am more productive than most board, well, I don't want to say I'm more productive than them, but I feel like my absences is not a big loss to the Old Bridge community. And I feel getting my master's is very important for me. I think most people would agree with that too, so that's my reasons for missing those meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Our next question is for all of our candidates, beginning with Ms. Francisco. In regards to teaching staffing issues, why do you think there may be a shortage, and do you have any solutions?
So clearly this is an issue not just in our town or in our state, but is a nationwide issue with a lot of different reasons for. We need to constantly evaluate best practices for attracting and retaining new teachers. I understand that the current economic climate has made it difficult to do so. However, we must keep looking at ways to improve this area. We must always do our best to hire the very best teachers for our children. Like I said, it is an issue that kind of is plaguing everyone at this point, of course makes it even more difficult. I think there's so many things that go into trying to attract and retain our new teachers. A very complex problem with very complex solutions. I think a lot of it goes back to leadership and teachers knowing that they're more supported and heard are going to be more inclined to stay. And I'm not saying that that's how teachers feel here. I'm just saying in general. So we just need to make sure that we continue hearing teachers and their needs so that they actually want to work in our district. I think a huge cause for this shortage is the ever-growing expectation of teachers. They're expected to do so much more with each passing year. We expect them to do the unexpected and they do it. And I think you've all heard me say time and time again, the teachers that I have come in contact with in our district, I call them rock stars. I was practically in their classes during COVID in my living room and upstairs, and I mean, rock
Thank you,
stars.
Ms. Francisco.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you. Ms. Bergham.
Well, I do know teacher staffing is a huge issue. I mean, it's all over the place. And I feel like sometimes teachers feel like they're not supported, like they don't get the support of the administration that they deserve. You know, things happen in the schools and maybe nobody backs them up. You know, nobody stands behind them, and they're always the villain right off the bat. So I feel like maybe if people are more supportive of the teachers, you know, maybe that would be a better way to go about it. You know, along with incentives, things like that. But I do feel like teachers just feel like they're kind of just out there by themselves, and I really do think they need a more solid foundation. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Bergham. Mr. DePrima.
That's a very hard question to answer. It's one of the mysteries of the COVID era. Besides, obviously, teachers is a known problem, but so is many other jobs. There's anywhere you go, people are complaining that there's nobody to work for them. As far as the teachers, I'm going to go with what the ladies before me said about support. I think they don't feel like they're supported as much as they should be. Through my experience of living in Old Bridge, I've gotten to know a lot of teachers, and they're wonderful people. I know they're there for the right reasons. My children had great experiences growing up here. But, you know, a little pat on the back sometimes goes a long way, too. Thank you. You're doing a good job. So I think the support is the major issue right now.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima. Mr. Dunn.
I can't say enough about our wonderful teachers here in this great district. They're the finest, and quite frankly, there is a shortage of teachers, and I think that what the district needs to do is that we need to reestablish our substitute teachers as employees of the district. You know, we outsourced our substitutes. That's no longer a proving ground. It's a third party who is, you know, giving us teachers for $115 a day as substitutes. Hey, you know what? There's other districts getting plenty of other money out there for their substitutes, $150, $175, and they're retaining those individuals. So we need to take a hard look on what the Board of Education is doing. We got to think out of the box a little bit, and that will help have that proving ground where our teachers can be successful and they will have to stay. You know what? Another thing is play with the steps a little bit. You know what? When you bring teachers aboard, there's a lot of competition out there. It's a fair market. So instead of bringing them on step 1, step 2, step 3 with an MA or BA, bring them on step 5, step 6. If they have a science or a math degree, they will be much better here. We need to retain our teachers. They are the finest. We want to keep them. We want to ensure we get the best and brightest for our district. You know what? I'm a huge advocate of our teachers and our staff here. I will go to battle for them at any given point. But there is a shortage. So it's fair market competition, and this Board of Education has to come up with solutions, and if that has to raise the steps, give the teachers raises, that's something which we need to do on the Board of Education level and dictate it down to the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Giordano.
Yes, so I've taken honors and AP courses in high school, so I know for some certain courses there's only one teacher for that course. So that could be one reason for the shortage. I know if we want to give the students the highest possible classes they could take, we need to have those specific teachers. And I've mentioned we have to be creative with how we move teachers around, and based on the enrollment and the class sizes for the classes and the electives that they take. And I remember last year with things that had to do with COVID, I remember we had one teacher specifically talk about how she was terminated for not getting tested, and other people have left and resigned for most reasons during the last year. So that could have been one of the problems. Now that that's over for now, those teachers should be coming back now that there's less restrictions. But yeah, moving around teachers for certain courses and things, that's what I think we have to do, especially at the high school level with all the electives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giordano. Ms. D'Antuono.
Attracting new teachers is a never-ending job because teachers retire, they change lines of work, then they move for family needs. So you're always going to need to attract new teachers. I don't necessarily believe, as some other districts are doing, of like lowering the standards to just take anyone and have warm bodies in our classroom. Our kids mean too much. but I think we need to concentrate more on retention of our staff. Sit down, talk to them, what are they looking for? I listened to a great business building podcast a few weeks ago, and it was how different generations of employees value things differently. Your older generations want your crystal plaque and your pin and your name, things like that. Your younger generations of employees don't. So what do our teachers need to stay? What resources are we not giving them? What tools could we use to help them? So I think although you'll always have to attract new teachers, and that's a never-ending project, I think we have a better chance by retaining the staff that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. D'Antuono. Ms. Jodry.
Thank you. During the pandemic, I feel like teachers were heroes for 10 minutes. And everybody talked about them pivoting on a dime and creating lesson plans and going immediately to remote instruction. And soon after that, teachers became the villains, and people started blaming them because they cared about their own kids, they cared about families. No matter where you fell in this, again, this was a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic for all of us. Nobody here has ever experienced something like that before, so people were making calls based on the information they had at hand. I think that teachers need to feel respected, but it has to be respect in practice, not respect with words, because you can say you respect anybody, but to really show you respect people, you have to take their opinions, take their experience into consideration. You have to show them that you made decisions based on their input and value what they say and make them feel that they're part of the community, and that's how you can retain them. When they feel like they're expendable, when they feel like, they're just yes to death, they'll go someplace else for a higher salary. And one more thing, I hope I have enough time, is that teachers are one of the only professions that they'll work day and night. They'll work past their contract hours. They'll work because it's not like when you work for Target and you put shoes on a shelf and you can go home and be like, those shoes are really nice, now I can go home. When you go home from teaching, it's Dylan and Tommy and Maria.
Thank you. Mr. Akabueza.
Teaching is a tough job. I had experience of teaching adult evening school, computer technology at Middlesex County Vocational Technical School. I also had experience of doing some substituting for Cedarville Board of Education. Teaching is a very, very tough job. I think they should be compensated. Teachers should be compensated very well. They should be paid very well. They should be offered continuing education so that they can stay on top of their subject, and they should be respected because they are a very important aspect of building a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akabueza. Mr. Helfman.
We're here to figure out the best way to be an inviting district, to show our veteran teachers that Old Bridge is the best place for them to be. I think more specific and targeted professional development helps. I think showing the teachers that there's better educational opportunities for them to become master teachers and to grow in education. I think the teachers want to feel more to be part of the process than they are. Obviously, teaching is not a 9-to-5 job, so we need to show the teachers that they're respected for working after hours, working summers if they need to. But I think more importantly than anything, I think we have to give the teachers the opportunity and programs for self-care. Because as a teacher, it's really tough thinking, oh man, I'm doing this, why am I doing this? We need yoga classes, we need something to get the teachers involved and be relaxed so they can want to be doing what they're doing to make Old Bridge and keep Old Bridge the best it possibly can be. So I think better educational opportunities, and ask the teachers what's going to keep them there, what they want, and how to make it better.
Thank you, Mr. Hilfman. Ms. Arbiel.
There's been extensive research on the impact of diversity and inclusion initiatives so we can attract, recruit, and retain wide range of talents. if given a chance to be a member of the Board of Education, I will champion making this district a pleasant, healthy, a diverse, inclusive working environment for all. We must remember every teachers and employees equal successful students, so everybody wins. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbio. Mr. DeFranco.
I think, as numerous people said, it's not an Old Bridge issue, it's an entire state, country issue. But I think, in general, one, we need to, as Lance had mentioned, we need to talk to the teachers, especially those who are, leaving, get an understanding from them of what's driving that. Is it something that, is just personal that they're just doing? So in that instance, you can't do anything about it. But if it's something about the job or, support or lack thereof, you certainly improve upon those. But I think support is a big thing, and it's not just support from the administration, it's also support from the parents. I feel as though a lot of people in general are just try to micromanage the teachers. And in anybody's profession, nobody wants to be micromanaged in their job. I certainly don't. We want to give them the benefit of the education that they took, that they went out and got, whether that's, especially those who've gotten masters and doctorates and whatnot. But I think that's a big thing, and as also was alluded to, is compensation structure. And I think there needs to be, we need to look at it and say, where can we kind of be fungible with the numbers in the sense of thinking outside the box. Maybe it's not necessarily base pay, but we can improve how benefits are, and or reduce benefit costs to them, things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranco. Our next question is also for everyone, and we will begin with Ms. Bergen. Currently, the DEIB is an ad hoc committee. Would you advocate for making it a Board of Education recognized committee?
That is.
That is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee.
So it's not an actual committee?
Currently, it is an ad hoc committee.
Yes, I would advocate for making it an actual committee instead of just an ad hoc committee.
Thank you. Mr. DePrima.
Yeah, excuse me. I think that's an obvious yes. I was at the first meeting, and it went over tremendously well. In this day and age, we keep talking about diversity and inclusion, but you need the representation for diversity and inclusion. So, yes, it should be a regular committee.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima. Mr. Dunn.
I absolutely agree that the DEIB should be a standard committee within the board structure. It should no longer be an ad hoc. We need to be able to make our district inclusive. We need to have a committee that's going to address the topics that are at the forefront, and it's important that we recognize everyone. We don't discriminate based upon you being a student. All students are equal, regardless you're here for an education. You need to be able to be treated fairly and equally, and that's the goal. And I believe the committee should be a permanent fixture of this district, so that we do have the checks and balance there, so that we could communicate with the community and ensure that we're covering all the bases as a Board of Ed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Giordano.
Yeah, so the first DEIB meeting happened, and a lot of people came. It was a success. I don't know how much people came, but I know it was good. I know the board as a whole makes that decision on whether to make it a full committee. Like I said, I have my priorities on trying to get kids out of college in 3 or 2 years. So if we could put that first and then go on with the DEIB, that would be good for me. But everyone needs to feel included and welcomed in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. D'Antuono.
I think if we're asking our schools to have DEIB committees at elementary, middle, and high school, I think the Board of Ed absolutely should be held to the same standards. And I don't think, it's the responsibility should just rely on our volunteer organizations of SEPTA and CPAC and things like that. I think the Board of Ed should be just as responsible to make sure that all of our students feel equal and included. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jodry.
Well, yes, of course. I think it should be on a committee, an actual committee. I think it signifies what it is important to us as a community, and it also goes a long way in showing students and families and the community that diversity and inclusion is important to us, and it matters to us, and I think it just helps us walk the walk instead of just talking about it.
Thank you. Mr. Akabueza.
I believe it should become a full committee in the Board of Education, and the staffing also should reflect the diversity we have in the community.
Thank you. Mr. Hilfman.
I think a DEIB full-time committee will benefit the students and staff. And as long as it's a viable committee with short and long-range goals, it will benefit Old Bridge itself. The more people who see that we are inclusive, diversity-wise, the more people will come to Old Bridge, the more people will stay in Old Bridge, and the more people will want to be in Old Bridge. And once that happens, we'll increase the schools, we'll increase the profitability of what we're doing, but most importantly, it increases the morale. The morale has taken a beating, and we need to bring it back, and this will help as a full-time committee bring it back.
Thank you. Ms. Arbail.
Absolutely, yes. I think throughout the night I spoke about the importance and significance of doing that. But before we do that, I think we must start electing diverse individuals in the board first. It's going to be odd to have a regular committee of Board of Education like diverse and inclusion without a diverse member in the Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeFranco.
Just going to reiterate everybody. Yes, I believe it should be there. I've stated it since its first meeting. But also, as Raya had mentioned, it's not necessarily just as a board member being diverse, but we need to be able to, when we have it, is encourage those who are diverse to be participants. Because, honestly, you can have a room of mostly white people sitting and talking about stuff. They've not experienced most of the injustices that people have. So, we certainly need to have people participate. So even if, there may not be members of the committee who are on it who are diverse, they need to encourage those that are to participate in it. And that's the biggest thing. And, during the meeting when we, Ms. Lent had asked, for, things to be said, that was one of the things I said is we can't dictate what is an injustice to people if we've never experienced it. So it's not just about having the committee, it's also just, one, getting the people to be involved that truly are affected by, what the committee's for. But also it's about, action. We could sound great and say, oh, we have a committee like this, we want to have a committee like this. If nothing comes out of it and it's just, in essence, lip service, it means nothing. And it actually does more of a disservice.
Thank you. Ms. Francisco.
So without repeating too many things, yes, I do think that it should be an actual committee. I think it can help with reflecting our diverse community outside of school, inside of school. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is also for all candidates. With negotiations beginning next year, you will be a board member during the process with the OBEA. What are your thoughts on collective bargaining? Given the history of negotiations in this district over the past 10 years, how would you want to work with the administration, your fellow board members, and the OBEA? Anyone want me to repeat that? There's a lot. You're good? Okay. Mr. DePrima?
I hate to keep going back on, experience and everything, but it's part of me. So I've served on negotiations many times. It's tough. You want the best for the teachers. You want to reward them for what they do, but you also have a fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers as a board member. There's a lot that goes into it. Many countless nights of staying till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, discussing and rediscussing and really just trying to get the best for both sides. I mean, it sounds simple the way I'm saying it, but it's anything from far from simple. It's probably one of the hardest things a board member can do, because you're representing the people that take care of your children, but you're also representing the people that pay for the people that are representing your children. So it's a fine line, like a seesaw. You got to be on both sides and hopefully do the right thing.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Collective bargaining is a very important piece of the OBEA's arsenal to be able to be compensated correctly. And I believe that they have all right to collective bargain, and quite honestly, we discussed it earlier, we're having problems finding teachers, we're having a lot of difficulties retaining teachers, and quite frankly, they're in the driver's seat, and we all say that the educators aren't paid enough, and I agree. I think educators are a very important piece of society, and they're going to be out there working and molding our children, and hopefully we can invest the money in up front and ensure that we don't have to spend it on the back end when they are citizens in society. So I would rather make that investment now. Unfortunately, since I'm conflicted, my wife is a teacher here, I do not serve on the negotiations committee. I would not, because I don't want to be branded as someone who's trying to influence, and also I'm not allowed to based upon ethics. But I can tell you unequivocally that collective bargaining is very important, and quite frankly, the staff here in Old Bridge does a wonderful job. Everyone here participates and does a special thing for our students. And quite frankly, at this point, since we are hurting for teachers, I think we need to, work with the OBEA. They've worked with us in the past. They've taken cuts in salary. They've taken cuts in benefits
Thank
to
you,
make us
Mr.
get
Dunn.
under our budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Giordano?
Yes, so I've taken the laborers relation course for those that are becoming business administrators, and I know that most of the negotiation and things with the budget go through the business administrator and the superintendent, and the lawyer's also involved, but it's important that the union and board makes that compromise to determine what's fair and what's fair for the union and what's fair for the people that pay the taxes in Old Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. D'Antuono?
Although I don't have any personal experience with collective bargaining before, it is something I'm willing to learn about and be open to. The phrase has been around, you can't pay me enough to do that. So I think part of the process isn't just the paycheck. It's what else are we offering our teachers, as alluded before, some of the benefits or tools and things like that. So I do think that both sides have to be heard. The OBEA is, a vital part of listening to what the teachers want and what they're looking for in order to remain in the district. And that's how I would do the OBEA.
Thank you. Ms. Jodry?
So, as a former member of the United Federation of Teachers and a union delegate and an active member of the Council for Supervisors and Administrators, I appreciate and understand the importance of the collective bargaining process. The process ensures that unions and employers bargain in good faith regarding such issues as wages, benefits, hours, workplace safety, and other terms and conditions. The collective bargaining process has been imperative in solving workplace problems and finding equitable solutions. And I think it's all about the equity and working together to find those problems. There shouldn't be a power imbalance where, some people have to relinquish either certain salary benefits or actual benefits because of the power imbalance. As a member of the Old Bridge Board of Education, if I'm elected, I will continue to fight on behalf of Old Bridge schools, work with the OBEA, and make sure that teachers and all staff receive high-quality training and professional development. And I think that is often done through the collective bargaining process. So, as you can see, I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Mr. Akaboyze?
While I have no direct experience in negotiations or not being a union member, I believe that the Old Bridge Board of Education should do everything in its power to make sure they negotiate fairly with the unions and make sure that whatever we do, we put our children first, and make sure that we make those who look after our children, the teachers and the school staff, happy in what they're doing based on what we offer them. That's what I would do.
Thank you. Mr. Hilfman.
Having been through negotiations 3 times in previous districts, collective bargaining can be a spearhead to creating a better relationship between the board, the community, and the staff if it's done right. It doesn't have to be as contentious as it might come off. It should be a win-win situation, but it's really important because it helps the staff, OBEA, and the board understand what's important to the staff. And inevitably, what's important to the staff is what's important to the students. And collective bargaining can be the best tool for that.
Thank you. Mr. DeFranco. So sorry, Ms.
It's okay.
Arbio. Thank you for calling me out.
Collaboration is a vital piece of collective bargaining. As a union member myself and being on the other side of that bargaining negotiation, I believe in the power of collective bargaining, and I will work tirelessly with the OBEA to achieve their goals, but also taking all the perspective of all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. DeFranco.
As was just said, it's a collaborative effort. It shouldn't be a winner-take-all process. Both sides need to go in understanding that the goal is to provide the most fiscal responsible aspect on both sides, both from the school administration staff aspect from being supported by the taxpayers, but also understanding you need to support your staff, because if you're not going to compensate them well, and that's not necessarily, as I said before, just salary, it's also benefits and other training opportunities that they can get. So I think it needs to be collaborative such that, there's no lines in the sand drawn. We're working for the best interest, which is the best interest of our students and our district as a whole.
Thank you. Ms. Francisco.
So while I have never been part of a collective bargaining process, I would look forward to working together to ensure that both parties are heard and supported. As a board member, as a parent, and a former teacher, I feel that I bring a very unique perspective to the table. I'd imagine this is probably one of the toughest jobs that a Board of Education member has to do or be a part of. In society as a whole, I feel that teachers are not valued nearly as much as they should be. I can be a voice for them, but at the same time, making sure I'm also listening to all stakeholders involved, the taxpayers and community members as well. Like I said, I look forward to having, be a part of something like that. And I do go back to what a couple of other members up here have said. Sometimes it isn't always about that step on the pay scale. It's about a lot of other things, morale and culture within a school and within a district that will help our teachers to feel valued, that I would imagine go into this collective bargaining process. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berghan.
I agree. I think that there's always a compromise, and I think that if everybody's heard and everybody feels like at least they walked away with something and nobody got everything, and they remember it's for the students, I think that would be a good thing. That's all.
Thank you. All right, we have come to our final question of the evening, and we will begin with Mr. Dunn. What is your position on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and social emotional learning being incorporated into our curriculum in Old Bridge Public Schools?
So obviously, education is the foremost important aspect of what a school district provides. And with that, we need to recognize the sensitivity issues that we have as students and also parents. This is an age-old question that's out there that's politically motivated at this point. And we need to understand that we need to worry about education first. And the peripheral issues are getting in the way of doing what's necessary for our school district. Honestly, there is a lot of contention out there regarding the health education that's being proposed by the state of New Jersey. Obviously, the health education is a third rail right now of concern for a lot of parents. Concern as well that, babies in elementary school should be learning, sex education. I think that should be left to the parents, and we need to work as a school district to figure out the best solution to deal with that. And I think that given the circumstances, I think the current Board of Education has done a good job in navigating those pitfalls. I think that they have, heard the public, even though there's been some concerns out there, since installation of the topic. It's an ancillary item, and I think that, we need to deal with what's important for the parents,
Thank
but
you,
also
Mr. Dunn.
worry about the students as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Giordano.
Yes, that topic is all fine and well, but it should be in addition to the real courses of English, math, science, history, etc. And we should be focusing more on making sure that our students have marketable skills for graduation, and we have many courses that offer that. So anything above that would be an addition, but if some people want it, that's also good. But like I said, we have to focus on the main subjects, make sure our students are ready for college and or the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. D'Antuono.
I think DEI and social emotional learning and all that is a very big umbrella to put into one part of the curriculum. But I do think that there has always been parts of the curriculum or any curriculum that has made strides or tried to do in it. And I know it's going to seem trivial, but like my daughter was doing first grade math, and I noticed, the names weren't just Jane and Bobby. Like, the kids are learning, more different names as far as, if you go into diversity as far as a race or a cultural issue. But as far as, the kids being able to see themselves, I know as a PTA Memorial just made sure we had books that have the kids seeing themselves in there, having, characters and stories with different abilities. DEI and social emotional isn't just a race issue. It's about including everyone of all abilities. And I do think we can make an effort to look at what we're presenting and make sure that our community is represented in our teachings. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jodry.
Would you repeat the question again?
Absolutely. What is your position about diversity, equity, and inclusion and social emotional learning being incorporated into the curriculum in Old Bridge Public Schools?
I'm absolutely in agreement that it should be incorporated throughout and across the curriculum. I think that teachers have shown to be trustworthy stewards of writing curriculum, ensuring that curriculum is written in respectful, grade-appropriate, age-appropriate manner. I think that representation matters, and all of our kids should be able to see not only people that look like them and who share their culture and their values, but all kids should be able to see people of different cultures and values and people that look differently than them as well. We, as a school district, we are responsible for preparing students for the future, and I think it would be unfair to not teach children to respect other people's cultures, to respect, and I think for that reason it should be included and embedded throughout the curriculum, and resources should be available to students. And again, I think that a big emphasis should be on recruiting people who represent our students and who they can look up to and share values and cultures.
Mr. Akaboyza.
We are in the business of educating future leaders of our community and by extension our nation. I think diversity is a good thing, and should reflect in what we do from the Old Bridge Board of Education to the staffing needs of our schools, so that everybody will be treated equally and everybody will have the benefit of being a part of this community and belonging. That's what I feel, that diversity should be encouraged.
Thank you. Mr. Hiltman.
I believe that we educate the whole child. And when the whole child sees somebody that they can relate to, even though it's not somebody who other people can relate to because of color or culture, then they feel that they're included in what's going on. So yes, I believe that DEI and social emotional learning is really important. We need to prepare our students how to relate to other cultures and for the next step, not just college and work, but life.
Thank you. Ms. Arvio.
I believe it could be an integral part for overall success of an individual. If it's part of the curriculum, it will be a great platform to better understand each other, learn from each other better, but we also have to be cognizant and be careful on execution. We might have the great intention in doing so, but poor execution can really dilute that noble vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeFranco.
No, kind of somewhat reiterate what Lance Mariah said. Certainly execution is key but that's just with anything, not just diversity and inclusion. But also we are teaching the kids as a whole. We're not just teaching them just to get to the next grade. We're teaching them, to be individuals in society. And they're going to be going into a society that is diverse. What I really think one of the drivers of, some of the fears out there of teaching it is, oh, well, if you teach and express that, there are different cultures out there, there are different sexualities and whatnot, that you're teaching the child to be that. You're not. You're just saying, it's normal for people to have two moms, two dads, whatever. But yes, yes, in our school, continually teaches be kind, but you can't just say be kind. That's not an answer to give to somebody to say, why should you be better? Oh, well, you just got to be kind. You got to explain, like, okay, it is okay that Jimmy has, two moms or two dads, and Samantha has the same. We just need to make that an understanding that nobody's trying to change anybody. They're just saying be respectful of everybody. There's different cultures out there. There's different races, genders, and whatnot. That you just need to understand that, and be respectful to them. Nobody's trying to teach you to become that. They're just saying, there are people out there that you're going to be dealing with, and be an actual respectful person, and let's treat them that way, because they're no different than you.
Thank you. Ms. Francisco.
I think DEI and SEL is part of educating the whole child, as Mr. Hiltman has said several times this evening. This is something we need to be doing as humans in general. Children must have opportunities to work with others of varying capabilities and backgrounds. I will always work to ensure that our children have access to materials and approaches that support an inclusive environment. We need to teach our children to truly get to know one another, which I think that extends beyond anything we can teach them, is just teaching them to get to know each other one-on-one. And that's what I encourage my children to do. You have a new student in the classroom, get to know them. My little one isn't with her best friend this year. For the first few years of school she was. Get to know some other people, start talking to them. And I think that once we encourage that type of behavior in school and outside of school, kids naturally become inclusive because they're really getting to know somebody. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berghan.
I do believe it should be included, and I guess it depends how it's taught. That's what I would be concerned with. How is it going to be included? I would want to know that. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. DePrima.
I'm glad people are separating the diversity, equity, inclusion, social-emotional, socio-economical from health, because it's two separate issues. As far as the question, we've been saying it all night. Everybody up here has been saying it. Everybody should have the same opportunity as everybody else. In my personal life, I have friends and relatives that are different than me. My children have friends and relatives that are different than them. And I'm sure my grandchildren will have friends and relatives that are different than them. But everybody deserves the same opportunity. Well, I don't want my kid coming home and saying, Daddy, why am I from or whatever? You're not. you might have different beliefs or understandings, but you're still a person, right, as everybody else.
Thank you, Mr. DePrima. So this is tonight. I wanted to just take a moment to thank all of our candidates for taking the time to be with us tonight, and I wish you all the best of luck on Election Day. I'd also like to thank everyone who's here for joining us and anyone that's watching. We hope that this program is going to help you to be able to make an informed decision on Election Day. I'd also like to take an opportunity to thank Mr. and the TV crew that's here tonight so that we are able to be on YouTube. And lastly, I'd like to thank the OBEA for providing tonight's refreshments. And please remember to Tuesday, November 8th. Thank you and have a good night.